Hello and welcome back to the Book, Business, and Brand Building Summit. I'm your host, Jesse Krieger, and I'm excited to be joined today by my good friend, actually my publisher, the publisher of Lifestyle Entrepreneur, as well as hundreds and hundreds of other books, founder of Morgan James Publishing, Mr. David Hancock. How are you?
Absolutely incredible, Jesse. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And I was just telling you before we hit record that my latest box of books came. And, it's just been a great joy. So everybody can see it here. Even though I run a book publishing company now, it all started with Lifestyle Entrepreneur, which is published by David and Morgan James Publishing. So, just a huge debt of gratitude and a fun experience to kind of come full circle into your world as the king of publishing. And I guess before we dive in, it's been a great joy having you be my publisher. And it's interesting to know, or it's interesting for me to notice how, now working with other authors and doing publishing work for others, how I still actually appreciate having a publisher that's sort of upline to administer my own book. There's something really interesting about that I've thought about, and maybe that's something you've experienced as well, working with publishers as well as now running a publishing company.
Yeah, in fact, it's part of my story. I'll share with you in a little bit, but I've got some really great experiences and some really strange experiences, but it's all part of how we got to where we're at today. And you mentioned hundreds of books. Would you believe we're just now passing over 2,700 books in the last 13 years?
I said too small. Thousands of books. Thousands of books.
Can you imagine? I never really imagined that many. It was. I always thought I had a really good idea and some rugged good looks. And my good looks was questionable, so I guess the idea was good, but it's complicated. I don't know if I'd have done this on purpose, but I'm having the time of my life, and I'm hoping we're changing lives, and we're certainly building a lot of relationships. But it is so rewarding to see others succeed. Well, as you see others succeed because of the power of a book. It's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, and there's something really special about being a part of that at the creation and the idea formation stage that I find the most rewarding aspect of publishing is like looking at, when we get to even 1,000 books, let alone 2,700 books, this wall won't be able to exist. It's going to be the entire block of the street long bookshelf, so.
That's right. I was telling you before we got started, we had our wall of fame too, and it got to where it was a little bit crazy. We had posters of the books everywhere. And then I was reminded before Rick Frischman retired from playing television art, because, he's our nonfiction publisher now. Every time I went up there to visit him, each one of the publicists had their rooms full of books and book covers. And most of them tore covers off of excess books that they had, which is a horrible thing to say, excess books. There's no such thing as excess books. It could always be used, but they tore off covers of the books and stapled them to the wall. And then they started to overlap. And then finally, once every 2 or 3 years, some of them once every year, they have to clean all that wallpaper off and start over again. But it was fun to see.
It is fun. I love the Wall of Fame here. There's even a few more I got to stick up there. But before we get into all that, maybe we can dial back the clock a little. And I'd love to hear, your own journey of being an author and how that ultimately led you into starting Morgan James. And you can do a little bit of that chronology, and then there's a lot of stuff I want to ask you, and I know there's a lot of value you have to share with everybody watching and participating in this summit. So maybe you can take us back and then bring us back up to the present, fully informed.
So we got 4 hours, right? Because my whole story is about a 4-hour story.
It's an all day. It's an all day.
We'll break for dinner. We'll come back. And all right, so I won't go back to birth, but I've got a very interesting path to publishing, one that I even did not ever expect. I'll go back just a little bit, just enough to give you a little bit of humor and perspective. I started out barely graduating high school. I ended up dropping out of college and was following my father's footsteps, and brother and family and now in-laws all going through the path of being a sheet metal mechanic at the local shipyard, where he builds most of the aircraft, actually all the aircraft carriers and at least half all the nuclear submarines. And that was just kind of where I was going. Ended up having a back injury that took me out of the manual labor aspect and got me back into school. Never did finish though, but got me back into school. Sold cars and during the process had like I said, had the back injury, which was totally, just threw me for a loop on what I was going to do with the rest of my life. But ended up becoming a residential developer, and this is where it gets really exciting. So I became a residential developer, built custom-built houses, was a lot of fun, then graduated over to the banking side of the mortgage, home industry, and I found my niche. I was happy. In fact, I teased that I was fat, dumb, and happy, all of which are true. But I was making stupid money. I was making more money than I knew what to do with, and I was having the time of my life. I really enjoyed the camaraderie of the people I worked with. I enjoyed making the numbers work, and I enjoyed seeing families get their goals achieved by either buying a house or buying things they needed or refinancing their debt and loosening that burden. Whatever. It was really rewarding for me, and I never imagined doing anything else. But the reality set in after doing that for years that in order for me to stay on top, I was a top producer making well into six figures, but in order for me to stay on top, I had to keep on doing things differently. And I slowly realized that I was like, I'm going to get all animated here because I get excited. So I was like literally one of 1,000 people offering basically the exact same product and service to the community as everybody else. And even though we all work for different companies, the banking business was pretty much the same deal with different names. And I had to stand out. Now, I even worked for a bank that had given me an unlimited ad budget. I could spend as much money as I could justify to market or advertise or even remotely somehow tie in that we might get business from spending this money. It was really kind of fun at first and crazy, but then I realized that's what everybody else was doing. And it just wasn't keeping me afloat. It was obviously keeping me afloat. It wasn't keeping me ahead of everybody else. So I started to figure out ways, what could I do more differently? How could I learn more, earn more, reach more, and do more, but still be different? So I started to study everything. And I went to seminars, and I read books. In fact, I had a great boss who's still a good friend of mine. In fact, his bride's my State Farm insurance agent. So we're still close. But, I bought home study courses. I went to all the industry-specific conferences that I could even go to, and then went to non-industry-specific conferences, even from the financial service side or sales and marketing. I went to Tom Hopkins, Zig Ziglar, Todd Duncan, to the big guys, to small guys, and all of it worked. And I came back and I implemented all those things that suggested. And I fine-tuned some processes. I hired a couple of assistants. I worked a little smarter. And it was great. But none of it really gave me that bolster in my career that I was looking for. None of it really gave me that special little edge that I thought would just take me to the next level. Not that I really even, Jesse, knew what I wanted. I just knew I wasn't there yet. And I wasn't greedy. I just wanted to grow, But it wasn't until I discovered a book, a singular book, that had actually been around for a while. This was probably mid-1990s. And the book I discovered was Guerrilla Marketing. Now, it was in its third edition by the time that I even discovered it, and I had never heard of the author. I never heard of the title, never heard of the concept. It just was Greek to me. In fact, it's funny, today I even teased, but it's true. I don't remember where the book came from. I don't know if somebody gave it.
I was just going to ask where did you actually stumble across the book, but I guess that one.
Well, I went to this bookstore. No, I really don't remember. It just showed up my desk. So, I tease that maybe I stole it, but I'm pretty sure I didn't steal it. But somehow I got a copy of the book. It was there. Divine Intervention, I don't know what. But anyhow, I got a copy of the book, and I read it. Now, like I said, it was in its third edition, had sold 15 million copies by then, and it was just all Greek to me. But it was like a light bulb coming in from within the pages, because it really was exactly what I was doing. I realized I was a guerrilla and didn't know it. I was leveraging my time, my energy, my imagination. Instead of the bank's unlimited ad budget, I was building relationships, trying to add value, trying to look at the long term. And all those things that guerrilla marketing was, I was doing, but just didn't know it had a name to it. So needless to say, I got really excited. A little crazy, but really excited. I immersed myself in all things guerrilla. I ended up taking a guerrilla marketing certification class, not that I wanted to coach anybody, because I wanted to learn more about guerrilla marketing. And it was just amazing. I loved it. So I ended up doing something that you and I both encourage all of our authors to do, is make sure there's a path for the reader to connect with the author. Well, Jay Levinson was one of the first that shared that with me. A couple other authors did a really good job. Bill Backrack, in one of his books called Values-Based Selling, was like one of the first ones I saw that did it really, really well. So you guys go buy that book and see how they did this before the internet. It was amazing. But anyhow, I reached out to Jay Levinson, and he responded. And ended up hiring him as a coach. Now, that wasn't a cheap venture, but I ended up hiring him as a coach. And it's funny, Jesse, I'll confess he didn't teach me anything I didn't already know.
Because you read his book, right?
But I was living it. I had read his book, and it was great affirmation that I was, in fact, a successful guerrilla, and it was wonderful, but I didn't have that next thing. But sure enough, not that he was holding anything back from me, but during our coaching sessions, he did kind of give me the one more thing. In fact, he tortured me with it. You ready for this? You guys are going to laugh with me, but I think you'll appreciate it. He finally said to me, he said, David, if you're kind of like, this is all great, I'm doing it, it's wonderful, and everything's great, things are smooth, and I'm growing the business, but just not, becoming that celebrity in my market that I expected. He said, David, if you wanted to charge more and negotiate less, I mean, who doesn't? Yeah, let's double all my fees and then not negotiate with anybody more. Let's just do that. Yeah, not something you can think that's possible. But he said, David, if you wanted that, you've got to just keep doing what you're doing because it's working. But you need to add one more thing. Now, you and maybe some close to us could figure out what that one thing is, but he didn't give it to me that quick. Of course not. And he went on to say, well, David, if you wanted to have the people that wouldn't give you the time of day start begging. I mean, we all have those whales of clients that we wish we could just nab or work with or whatever. And I had those too. And he said, if you're one of those people that would start begging to get on your calendar, you've got to keep doing what you're doing. But you need to add one more thing. And I'm like ready to strangle him at this point. Like, what is this one thing? So, of course, he didn't tell me yet. So he kept, then he finally said to me, I love him. We've ended up becoming dear friends. But he went on to say, David, if you wanted to have the media call you every time something happened in your business, in your space, you've got to keep doing what you're doing, but you need to add one more thing. Now, I never really imagined the media ever calling me for anything. But I do have a face for radio, as you guys can appreciate, but I didn't have that. I didn't even see that. Thanks for not laughing out loud. So, or agreeing with me. I've had somebody agree with me once.
I put my mute on so that it didn't switch over to my camera angle.
That's right. So I didn't really imagine what that could be, but he basically said if you wanted the media to recognize you as that authority, you've got to keep doing what you're doing, but you need to add one more thing. And he finally revealed it to me, Jesse. He said, David, you need to write a book. Now, at this point, I had so much, I know, right? At this point, I had so much buildup, I literally laughed out loud. I didn't get it. Write a book. Come on.
Coming?
Yeah.
You were thinking something totally else, something totally different?
Magic sauce or fairy dust, as Brian G. Johnson talked about. Yeah, something, but a book. Come on, I don't. Me. I didn't see it, but he was full of grace, man. I tell you what, he lovingly calmed me down and helped me recognize. He said, "Well, David, all these seminars you've been going to, all been based on books, right?" Yes. All these books you've been reading were books. All these these home study courses that you've been coming back and implementing and buying upsells. All that was based on books, right? And I'm like. Finally, it hit me like a ton of books. Okay, yeah, thank you for that. But finally, it hit me, and he was right. The book was the hidden ingredient that I hadn't yet tried or even imagined, even though it was right in front of me. So I ended up writing a book. Didn't realize that was a hard thing to do. He gave me a little bit of coaching, but I ended up putting a book together. Basically, I put an outline together. I said, okay, Jesse, if you're going to sit down with me for 30 minutes, these are the 10 or 12 things I'm going to get across before you kick me out or walk out, one of those things. So I ended up getting an outline done, ended up writing a book. Come to find out, I had already had content. I was doing a newsletter. I was doing pieces to my clients, doing pieces to my would-be prospects. I had content, so I kind of compiled a book, wrote a book in 30 days. Didn't realize that was a hard thing. Then I ended up getting it published by New York House. I was blessed. I had no idea that was hard either. I ended up getting it published, and it was a no-brainer. I was like, well, why isn't everybody doing this? Don't tell anybody. But the process was interesting to say the least. Now, first-time author, really no real background. The only platform I had that I was successful in my community, but that was all that that I had to offer. So I was just a clog in the wheel. And it was just not a fun experience. In fact, I had no input in the final text. I basically gave all my rights away to the book, had no input in the cover at all. I hated the cover when I got it, and had no input in the final title either. I mean, literally, who am I? And then when I got the book, I realized that they had even added 3 chapters to my book. It'd been nice to be told about it, but no, they added chapters 3, 7, 9. And they just thought that it needed a little extra. And, well, sure enough, it was good, but I didn't write it, so I had to learn it. Not that it was bad, but it was added to the book. So that wasn't fun. But Jesse, you know what? Jay Levinson was right. It worked. In less than 8 months, everything that he said could happen happened to me. I literally doubled my income, and I truly did. As I joked a moment ago, I literally doubled my fees, and nobody negotiated with me anymore because now I was that authority in my space. I wasn't obnoxious about it, but I had that business card of a book. In fact, the bank I worked for wouldn't let me toss my business cards, so I tossed my business cards in the book, and I gave away the book like it was nothing. It was the most expensive business card you can imagine, but it was powerful. I mean, I literally doubled my already 6-figure income, so it was good. But then, sure enough, the people that would never give me the time of day, I was on the mortgage side, so the housing market, there's big celebrity agents that I kind of, ultimately, I guess I wanted to be on my side. They were starting to knock on my door. The bankers that were, the other bankers were sending me business. The lawyers were sending me business, and I was getting referrals like crazy, all because of the power of the book. But as I said, that process was rather miserable. They were yelling at me all the time to sell more books. I'm like, I didn't write the book to sell it, but it was one of those things.
It's really fascinating, and it's so great to hear how that first experience sounded sort of seamless and almost painless. Like, you didn't know it was hard to write a book in 30 days. You didn't know it was difficult to get a publishing deal with the New York publishing house, but that every one of Jay's predictions came true in spite of you laughing when he finally dropped the bomb on what that secret ingredient was. But I would reflect that, the exact same thing has been the case with me. And it's one of the reasons I've become such a strong advocate for books. I mean, the U.S. edition of Lifestyle Entrepreneur, when this came out.
Wow, what a beautiful book. I'm sorry. It's a beautiful book. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. But and similar experience. I mean, the publisher really did a good job. But once it came out it's about 2 years ago in early 2014, now to this day, I still get 1 to 3 media requests inbound. People reaching out saying, we'd love to have you on this podcast. We'd love to have you be a featured presenter on this virtual summit. I've been invited to speak on stages, been invited onto radio and other media. And it all actually does trace back to the book, plus having an inbound pathway, an easy way for somebody to get a hold of you. Not to mention on the client side, if you're the one who literally wrote the book on it, then in terms of negotiation and fees, people can self-select and say, like, I know that you're the person that I want to work with. I know that you're the one that I want to do X, Y, and Z for me because I read your book and I think we have a lot in common. It takes the whole negotiation aspect out of client onboarding, which is another phenomenal outcome. So just want to reflect back that that experience isn't just yours alone, and that it's available to more or less everybody who does take in the time and energy to write a book and get it out there in a big way.
Isn't that amazing? It's the truth, though. And I just, it happened so quickly for me, I was just blown away. I immersed myself even deeper into guerrilla marketing because I thought that was the secret, which is certainly is a big part of it. But I also immersed myself in the reality was, wow, this is like the most powerful guerrilla marketing weapon that any business person could have. And the timing was perfect, Jesse. Right about the time that book came out, my business was exploding, but I had migrated into the wholesale side, which meant for me, my client was now what I used to be. So I worked for the big banks. I had money to give to the little guys or the brokers or whatnot to offer to their clients. So I was in a great position to help other entrepreneurial people, whether they realize it or not, grow their business from what I could teach them from guerrilla marketing. And of course, my secret weapon now was, that they should duplicate my success with them writing a book. That's kind of that's how the story continues.
And well, it's fascinating. So was there a direct segue from having that book and having that experience and then moving into publishing, or were there some more intermediate steps? Because I know you ultimately eventually partnered or co-authored a number of books with Jay Levinson, if I'm not mistaken, at least one, if not many.
Yeah, a lot actually. Yeah, in fact, it is part of that story. So I really became very immersed in the guerrilla marketing aspect and the power of the book. But I was still very fascinated with my day job. I loved doing what I was doing, and I was making stupid money and having the time of my life. Really, I was building a network of friends that I was seeing them all succeed. So I mean, how bad could that be? But I was still very interested in doing my day job as a banker. And you're right, I ended up convincing Jay Levinson to co-author my next book with me. So my second book was a book called Guerrilla Marketing for Mortgage Brokers. Very exciting, but it was perfect niche for for that environment. And the first edition was published by one of his publishers, and we ended up getting it published. That wasn't necessarily a hard thing to do either, so I'm still kind of a little naive at this point. And then we had a better experience, but it still wasn't what I would expect a true relationship with the publisher could be or should be. They really could care less about us. They wanted to sell books, and they really just fought us the whole way. It wasn't a let's work on this together. It's like, we're doing this whether you like it or not. We ended up having no input in the cover. We didn't really like the cover when it first came out. Now, Jay owned the brand, so the title was pretty much set. But the content we fought for. I mean, we ended up not even being able to use the word internet in our book, because this was late 90s. The internet was becoming very relevant, but we weren't allowed to use it because it was just a fad. It was too new of a word. It wasn't something that was going to stick around. They didn't want that in the book. It was like, hello? But it was just a fight the whole time. The book worked, though. We got it published, and I ended up selling 40,000 copies to the bank I worked for, which, trust me, is a good thing, but not a good thing. When your boss is required to read your book and he has problems with it, you know, from an ego perspective, it causes some issues. So the beginning of the demise of my banking days started about then. But I was having so much fun, and we were making the company a lot of money. And basically, they bought 40,000 copies of my book to send out to every one of our clients. And they said, you need to read this book to grow your business. You know, so everybody was reading my book. It was wonderful. But the publisher, sure enough, standing on our shoulders to sell more. Never could satisfy them. Always fighting with, cost of the books from us as an author perspective to availability. And, of course, the internet was growing. Amazon was barely in place back then. So it was an uphill battle for everything. It just wasn't. Jay on board. He's like, hey, this is publishing. You make the best of it, and you don't make any friends, but this is the best of it you can do. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. Not that I knew what that was yet. So over the years, so this is throughout the early 90s, mid-90s, early 2000s, finally I decided, I'm going to self-publish now. I think there's some opportunities starting to arise. It looks like it could be a viable thing. It's finally affordable to do so. And now that I'm a best-selling author, be careful what you say, I could do this. So I ended up self-publishing 2 books over the period of, 2000 to 2002, and I loved it, Jesse. I really did. I enjoyed being in complete control of everything. And I'm not a control freak. I had just lost so much input. I enjoyed that part. I knew what the book was going to look like, taste like, feel like, smell like, when it was going to come out, what price, and it was my content. It was great. But the problem was that nobody cared, unfortunately. Now, self-publishing is absolutely better than not doing anything at all, but I had a little bit of spoiling with my books being available everywhere, and then now me doing these other books could be the content. It just didn't have the same reception that I had with my traditionally published books. So I was a little frustrated. And some of them sold well, but it just wasn't the same for me. It was very frustrating. So I kind of thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if somebody could take the best of both worlds, of the author involvement, the community aspect of the self-publishing, and with the credibility, the professional product, because ultimately the books did look good, except I didn't like the cover, but they were high quality, and they were in bookstores, and that kind of stuff. What if somebody could put that together? And I never did anything with it. I just kept running my day job because that's all I knew at the time. I started to speak. I was having so much fun. But the reality was, by 2002, Jesse, I was working probably 23 hours. My wife would say 24 hours a day, but maybe 22, 23 hours a day. And she's not kidding. And I was really just spending about 2 hours a day in my banking business, because I ended up working from home at this point. And I worked for the big guys in Irvine, California, wherever that is compared to where you're sitting. And exactly. So, I took my best friends to lunch, and I had clients all across the country, and it was all automated. They were sending business in. I was getting credit. I was on the media. Oh, yeah, by the way, the media called me weekly. It was unbelievable. It was crazy. And I was just having the time of my life, making stupid money and just playing. And then the other 22 hours a day, I was trying to help my clients grow their business with this new thing called guerrilla marketing. And, oh, yeah, the power of a book being like the most powerful weapon you can have in your arsenal. And I was having the time of my life.
So you weren't sleeping, you possibly weren't eating, and it was effectively a 24/7 undertaking.
Look at me, I was eating. But yeah, you're right. But my wife, in her infinite wisdom, realized something that I needed to know. She said, David, we have to talk. Which you never want to hear from your spouse, because for me, man, I was in trouble. And I had been there several times. I knew exactly where she was going. And she said, you're working 2 full-time jobs. Something's got to change. We've got 2 small kids now. I'm never seeing you. Something has to change. And she was right. So we ended up sitting down, and we thought, okay, this is a new passion. There's got to be a way to wrangle it. So we thought, well, why don't we just open up our own publishing house, kind of on the side, build a little balance back into our lives, and see if we can maybe make some money with it, but also just kind of create a little control and, balance the banking job and balance the publishing thing and just see where it went. Ended up doing that, ended up naming it after my 2 kids. Morgan is my platinum blonde, 15, and James is my 17-year-old little Einstein. They're both smarter than I am, which is easy to do. But we did that in 2003, and it just took off.
So that is the birth of Morgan James Publishing, named after your 2 children. Isn't that sweet?
I know. And the whole idea was to try to give an entrepreneurial edge in publishing to people just like me, people just like you, where you can leverage the book. Of course, book sales are important. We all want book sales. Of course, as a publisher, you and I both know we have to have book sales to make any money. But the reality was my whole focus was how can we leverage the book? Who cares about the book sales? Let's leverage the book to grow the day job, to grow the passion, to reach the mission or whatever it could be. And it was dynamic. It really was a lot of fun.
So was that, I mean, yes, we're definitely in line with that. And of course, you and Morgan James and your whole process is what inspired me first from seeing it from a reader's perspective, reading books like Millionaire Messenger and many of the other great books that you guys published, the Guerrilla Marketing series and those books, and really seeing how the book is a foundational part of the broader business and brand. In fact, is one of the catalysts for the book Business and Brand Building Summit. Is just showing that it's a holistic picture instead of just how to write your book based on your passion or how to become an author or those things in isolation, but rather how does that book play into the broader business and personal brand development. And I think that's something you're probably most qualified to speak on. So, as you did make that transition, it sounded like at first it was just going to be a way to bring more balance into your life. Was that the case, or then did it just amplify on all fronts and cause a new dynamic?
Oh, I tell you what, it did eventually bring some balance into life. It wasn't necessarily immediate, but it was pretty darn quick. But the reality was it was a lot of fun. It still was. We started to take a little bit more control of our time. But a funny thing happened. I've been hanging out with these speakers. I've been going to these conferences. I've been buying the home study courses, and I'm really good at building relationships. So I became friends with a lot of these speakers, including Jay Levinson and others. And so the reality was our first 12 real authors under the brand were people like Jay Levinson. We did a 3-book series of just him that were phenomenal. We ended up signing people like Armin Morin. We signed Tony Alessandra. Gracious, I can't rename the name. But yeah, we don't tell anybody. I can't remember all the names at this point. But on the spot, we had 12 incredible people. Tony Alessandra. Who else was it? It was Joe Vitale, Ted Ciuba. Just some really good names. Yeah, and they had platforms, and some of them already had traditionally published books. So I just had a really good idea. They liked what I had. I had nothing to offer, really, but we just grew it. And then sure enough, within a year, I ended up quitting my day job as a banker. And just as I had mentioned, I had planted that seed with my boss not really appreciating having to read my book, and that I was making more money than him, which was not normal in his eyes. We ended up clashing, and I ended up walking out, leaving, and then started to make a real go at the publishing house.
Yeah.
Still not necessarily knowing what to do with the books in the bookstores. Our whole focus was helping entrepreneurs leverage a book, and we were making money by selling books to the authors. And a switch started to happen around that 2004 mark. Was we were selling so many books to the authors that the bookstores started to pay attention to. Here's a book out here that an author that we normally had that we don't have access to. Where can we get it? They started tracking me down. I'm like, what? Go away! I don't want to sell you books. I had to figure out how to sell books to bookstores. And then finally end up getting actual real life distribution. Lots of great stories, down this path, but ended up getting distribution by one of the largest in the nation who just discovered us. And we just grew from there, all focusing on our common core is 80% of our decision is the author. They're entrepreneurial. They're doing it for the right reasons. They're leveraging the book. They're coachable, and we're going to have fun together. And then the other side, the book itself, you can hire a better editor. You can hire a better ghostwriter if you had to, but you can't fix an author that's not coachable. But yet adding the credibility of distribution, we ended up branching out to New York. We opened up our headquarters in New York by 2005 because we said to ourselves, who wanted to be published by a Virginia publisher, which is where I live, and when you should be published by a New York house? And we did that, and sure enough, everything doubled. It was laughable. It was almost like the first book I published. All of a sudden, things that you would never imagine doubled. It was all because of that perception of the New York, the brand. And we were always picky about who we published, but we started to get tighter and tighter about our focus. Our business, nonfiction, entrepreneurial niche just became very clear, and we grew into this brand. And it's just been so much fun. But the core is exactly like we talked about. How can we help someone leverage the power of a book? And oops, what happens when you do that is you end up selling a lot of books. So now, Jesse, I have over 2,700 multiple streams of income. So bring it on.
That's amazing. And what was sort of the development like in terms of in those early days, 2004, 2005, when you got that distribution? What was the size of the catalog then? And maybe you can talk just a little bit about that transition into being more along the lines of traditionally distributed publisher.
Yeah, sure will. In fact, it was humbling to me the numbers that we were doing and the number of authors we were working with and the numbers of books we were selling, because it wasn't necessarily big numbers to me. This was just a side gig for me. I love making money, but it was just really not something that I imagined it could ever really become as big as it is today. We were doing probably, by 04, 05, we were doing maybe 90 books a year. And I was going to conferences. I was still learning. I was still trying to figure out ways to improve myself, but I was meeting great people at the conferences, making good friends with the speakers and the higher profile people. It was just really dynamic. But it wasn't until I got that phone call, because I was smart enough to use a printer that was owned by one of the largest book people in the world. We print with Lightning Source, which is owned by Ingram. And Ingram, at that point, didn't have a distribution arm. They just had a wholesale arm, meaning the book was available at any bookstore and they could order it, which is great. But it certainly wasn't something that somebody could go peddle the books or find the books easily, except for online. But we were selling a lot of books through them, so that one day the vice president called me about the time that I was getting ready to start not enjoying my job as a publisher, because when the bookstores started to call me for books, I had to, 1, figure out how to sell them, and 2, figure out what price, and 3, what do I do with all the returns, because they were notorious for sending them back. And in bookstores, or in the book business, I don't know if your audience knows this, but typically in traditional publishing, all the books we sell to bookstores are completely 100% returnable for life. And the bookstores would take advantage of that if you didn't have a good relationship with them or figure it out. Well, I'm still learning. So they would order 1,000 books today, return 700 of them the day before the bill was due, and then order 300 more in 2 weeks. It was colossal waste of money. It was no fun. All of a sudden, I had a different argument with my lovely bride. Now my garage is full of books. We're not going to go down there. But anyhow, so the CVP called me and said, "Who are you? What on earth are you doing? How are you selling so many books? And how can I help?" And it was the time that I really needed it. I was literally leaving messages for book companies to call me back. How can I help get distribution or warehousing or something, because I needed some help. And they called me. It was really amazing. It was a God moment, man. It was amazing. And sure enough, we kind of, another whole great story there, flew down to Tennessee, met with them, and realized that we're not a perfect fit, but we're a perfect fit. And they made it work. So they kind of beta partnered us in. This is now 2005-06 timeframe. And our first batch of books, it was like 12 books out of our catalog of over 90 a year now, that they said, let's try with. Well, one of those happened to be Joel Comm's AdSense Code, which was our first New York Times bestseller. Oh, by the way, it was like within 60 days of that time that we got distribution. So it was like, well, that worked. And we just grew up from there. So, of course, after that, we went full on, our entire catalog being represented by Ingram. Ingram actually started a publishing distribution arm about that 2004 timeframe. We were one of their first clients, even though we weren't their quote-unquote ideal client, but we were definitely their ideal client, and we grew into it. And they've always been gracious with us, because I knew just enough to be dangerous but didn't know it all, and was obvious, and they walked me through it and helped me. And they've been great to work with. But I don't know if I answered the question or not.
No, that's good. Partially for my own. It's really fascinating. It may not be the most relevant thing if people are watching this and they're not looking at transitioning into a publishing role and getting distribution. But it's certainly something that's on my mind. So it's sort of a stealth question that I wanted to slip in there, since at some point, I want to begin expanding into more retail environments with our books. And I always remember, I think maybe from a previous conversation with you, about having to be careful about the book buys and the consignment model and the returns. And I consciously didn't pursue that until now. You got about 20 titles and a lot more coming. And now the question's on my mind of, okay, how do we expand this distribution-wise? And I think you definitely start to speak to that. So it's definitely valuable, and you did answer the question, which I appreciate.
Whenever you're ready to talk, man, I'll open the doors and introduce you to the right people, man. In fact, if people often say to me,
"Oh God, am I glad that we're recording this?"
I know, ask you shall receive. You know what? This is funny, because not everybody appreciates it, but you and I do. Some would say that we're like almost competitors. I mean, we're in the book business, we're in the entrepreneurial space, and we both have our own niches, and we're both doing well. But the reality is, our guerrilla marketing training teaches us that we have no competition. We only have opportunities for collaboration. So, anything I can do to help you succeed, just I think is a good thing. And vice versa. You refer us business. I try to do whatever I can to help you out. And it comes back to us in the long run, man. I'm happy to help.
I appreciate that very much. And honestly, for all of you watching, this is sort of a love fest moment right here. But there's a couple of valuable takeaways, and maybe we can flesh those out for a second. Is, on the one hand, if objectively, sure, Morgan James and Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press, we're on a parallel business model, but I also don't see any competition in this because, one, people don't just read one book, right? It's not like other consumables where you're just trying to decide the right washing machine for your house and then you own it for 10 years. People read dozens of books, sometimes 50 plus books in a year if you're really going after it. So there's no shortage of opportunity in the book space. And also this collaborative approach. I mean, it's maybe beyond the scope of this interview, but we have also a partnership where I send authors to Morgan James if they're ready to do a full distribution and in-store distribution on their book, and vice versa. We have this complementary, friendly relationship, and that's how I think business should be done generally, because it just makes it more fun and it's better for everybody. And who wants to go to work thinking about who can you compete and take out of the game every day? It's not even in my thought process.
I know, right?
So that's pretty fantastic. And so after the distribution sort of to today, that's like another 10 years or so, but was it a pretty consistent run from that point to scaling up to the catalog size you have now with over 2,700 books? Or were there any other key defining moments after that distribution relationship formed up until now?
There really was, and part of it was a really hard learning curve for me because I am entrepreneurial. I'm a guerrilla marketer. I like breaking rules that need to be broken, and I thought all the rules in publishing needed to be broken. But it wasn't until we brought on, and this is another whole story too. But I mentioned Rick Frischman earlier. We brought on Rick Frischman in 2008, but I had met him finally in person in 2006. But I had been reading his book since early 2000. He came on and we met at a conference, believe it or not. Conferences are great places to meet people. And we just fell in love with each other. And he was sending us great business. He was running the world's largest, or the nation's largest PR firm. Ended up selling it to the world's largest PR firm, but he was doing really well. And he loved what we were doing, loved our passion and loved our niche, but also realized I needed some coaching. So I was wide open but very coachable. So he started to teach me the things that I needed to know, and it worked. And sure enough, when he came on board as our publisher, we had to tweak our model a little bit so that the industry would start to recognize it. Because we also have a collaborative approach, but collaboration and publishing, people start turning their nose down. They weren't always understanding it, but it definitely is a new wave of publishing. In fact, we knew that early on because in 2006, we were featured in Fast Company magazines as one of their Fast 50 companies for and standing to control it in 10 years. And well, sure enough, that's where we're at right now. It's so amazing. But we had to abide by certain things. Some of that is the longer lead time into the bookstores. Some of that is inventorying the books a little smarter than most publishers. I have a banking background, so we don't just print books and ship them to the warehouse and pray they sell like what seems to be the model for publishing for years. We always balance the demand, the platform of the author, the pre-sales commitments from the bookstores, and then try to manage inventory so we can maximize our money but not be stupid and be stuck with a bunch of books. And even still today, we've got 61,000 books in inventory that are constantly flowing and going, and we're selling 10 million books in the last 10 years or more. It's amazing, but we have to do certain things that kind of is industry acceptable, but we have to do them better. Well, sure enough, right about that 2008 time frame was all of a sudden, whatever we changed, however we started to work and however clean our contract got, all of a sudden Publishers Weekly started to pay attention to it. So we had our first write-up in Publishers Weekly. They named us one of the top publishers in the nation for, again, surviving in tough economic times, because we all remember 2008 wasn't a great economic year. We were booming. And it just kind of started that process of playing above the radar, but playing within enough of the rules that they see us as a traditional house, but we took all the unconventional things that are normally good for us and built it into the leveraging of the company, and then the public just starts to pay attention to you when they can't avoid you.
Gosh, I'm just having like a deja vu and gratitude moment here. I'm realizing how much I've actually learned from just viewing your business and through osmosis, and as well from just like talking with you about it. So many similarities. There's something so valuable, and I think maybe this is another takeaway learning lesson of like when you enter in a new business space. when you enter a new industry, start a new company, there is kind of a value to staying under the radar to a point where you kind of get a critical mass within your customer base, within your reach, before you try or actually do a proactive push to do things on the radar, albeit in your own unique way. And I think that's my takeaway from hearing what you just shared, David, is, after you structured your distribution, after you had the capability to be in stores with your catalog, and once the bigger publications, Publishers Weekly, other industry trade magazines and organizations started to take notice, you still kept and still retain that unique sort of hybrid, non-traditional approach to publishing, but are now getting traditional awareness and visibility and exposure. Is there anything you'd want to add to that and how it's worked out to be a little bit of a renegade, but still fitting into what's kind of a slow-moving, slow-evolving industry?
I know, right? And it really has been a lot of fun. It hasn't been without its stress, of course, as with any growing organization. But the reality is we kind of maintain true to our principles. In fact, Morgan James Publishing has got deep roots in guerrilla marketing. We're very unconventional. And we do obtain the same conventional goals that other publishers have. Selling books, helping authors support, grow their well, that's our kind of thing. We get it, but helping authors grow their platform and then having successes. Today we've been on the New York Times list over 27 times. The USA Today over 13. Wall Street Journal just once, but hey, I'm working on it. But, it's a process. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a process of going through those growing pains. I tell you what, in 2008, we were publishing 200 books a year, and I don't think we were doing them that well. There's a point when you have to kind of reel back and go, hey, let's kind of perfect this a little bit. In fact, over the 2,700 books, probably a little over 1,000 authors that we published, our only 2 negative strings on any Google search is about that same time frame when we weren't doing things great. We weren't doing anything wrong. We were just doing things slower. We weren't giving the same level of attention that we can give today. So we started to reel back a little bit. In fact, it's funny. Those always hurt your feelings when you have anybody complain about you. But, we've published 2,700 books, 13 years in business. We have 2 complaints. Sign me up for that, but it still hurts. But we pay attention. So we fine-tuned the processes. We brought in people. I brought in people that were smarter than me in areas that I couldn't even remotely think I could do, and just kind of grew from there and gave enough room for them to do what they do best, but make sure I kept teaching them the guerrilla principles and they understood and they buy into our process. And it's just been so much fun. And that's the key thing. So for a business, surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, that do things better than you can do, and then giving them the room to do it, but still maintaining that, the company core of why you're in business in the first place, amazing things can happen.
I love that. Maybe you can speak to, it's really interesting to hear how you sort of embedded the guerrilla approach into the sort of fabric of Morgan James Publishing, and as well as your approach to author marketing. What are a couple of principles maybe you could share with the people watching this and listening to us about how they can apply this guerrilla marketing, guerrilla approach to business into their own pursuits as authors and entrepreneurs and business owners?
I really think it's about serving others. I mean, obviously we all need to make money. We need to have a good product that people can use. But from an author perspective, from a publisher perspective, it's about content. We want to make sure that people can benefit from what they're getting from us. And whether it's buying a book from the company or having a relationship with an author, we want to make sure that we're delivering something that's value that they can use. It's funny, one of the things that we don't do as a publisher, which every publisher seems to do, is we don't put in our agreements to have the first right of refusal for their next books. We're going to earn that right. We're going to earn the privilege of having the book submitted to us. We're not right for everybody. Like, in fact, one of the books behind your head says one size doesn't fit all. We understand that, but we're not going to lock in an author to work with us because they're contractually obligated. We're going to earn that right. And all those things take time. So looking outside of the typical little thing, well, that's the way it's always been. It's been one of the most dangerous phrases in business. You've got to be sure that you're doing the things that need to be done, adding value, but my biggest thing is staying out of the way. And those are all taught to me by guerrilla marketing. In fact, I wrote a book. It ended up being co-authored by Jay Levinson. It was called The Entrepreneurial Author. And it took me 6 years to write, Jesse. And I was kind of outlining what we're doing as a publisher. If you really want to know the real true guts and glory of what it means to be an entrepreneurial author or entrepreneurial publisher, read that book. And the reason why it took me 6 years to write it is because I kept teaching guerrilla marketing principles to my readers and my clients, and I was putting that in the book. but I kept giving credit to Jay for it. Jay taught me this. Jay taught me this. Well, Jay kept telling me that he taught me guerrilla marketing, but yet I was doing it already without him, and that I was personalizing and making it my own. So basically, I was doing my own guerrilla marketing, and it just sounded so clunky. Finally, after about 5 years, it was really difficult for me to get that book to sound right. And I called up Jay. I said, Jay, you've got to go on with me as a co-author again. And he agreed. And sure enough, all of a sudden it became one language. All of a sudden I was able to kind of take ownership of my phrases, the concepts, everything that we're doing as entrepreneurial authors, which is really nothing more than guerrilla marketing in the writing space. And it cleaned it all up. And it just made it really, really easy for me. Some other guerrilla marketing spaces, of course, is the power of giving things away and the power of over-delivering. Guerrilla marketers are very, very wise at delivering more than their clients can ever expect, and we try to do that here as well. Same thing with the authors of our books. We want to make sure the content over-delivers and recognizing that 80 to 90% of it's about them. The other 10, 20% is about what the next steps are, but you got to keep that in mind. I'm rambling on now, brother. Don't get me started.
No, that's really good. I mean, just a tendency towards over-delivering, really attaching to what the value is that you're helping create through your book and through your communication, whether it's guerrilla or not, but being of value and of service in each of those points of contact, but also being able to stay out of the way. I think there's a lot of value to take away from that. And I think the co-authoring part is interesting too, how, you've now co-authored with Jay on a number of projects, and a number of books you've published are co-authored. And I know there's some people that do like one chapter each for 10 writers and compile that all into a book. So there's many different approaches you can take as an author, as an aspiring author. If you're watching this, it doesn't necessarily have to be you sitting alone at a computer or a typewriter writing the entire thing yourself. The opportunity to collaborate with other people that have domain expertise that complements yours can make the whole book creation process, as David shared, going from 5 years of wondering how to get the wording just right to everything falling into place, and away you go. So
don't be afraid to co-author. In fact, only 3 of my now 13 books that I've written were written by myself. My first one and my 2 self-published books. The rest of them, I borrowed the credibility and platform of somebody else. Now, I was blessed. Most of my books are co-authored with Jay, who we ended up becoming fast friends. I even had the privilege of speaking at his funeral. We still publish most of the guerrilla marketing books that you're buying in stores today. So he obviously, it was a great relationship. But I borrowed his platform. I borrowed his credibility, and ended up continuing to grow from it. And then I co-authored with other people that were smarter at what they do than what I was, and it just made sense. You don't have to do it by yourself. Borrow that credibility. Heck, even after you have the credibility, there's always still someone who will be smarter than you. So that's why my 12th book was co-authored by somebody else. He was smarter in those areas than me. Now I look good. So it's a good thing.
I love it. And that's probably a key takeaway from this whole conversation is the power of, you call it borrowing, I think in collaboration with, or becoming sort of an adjunct to somebody else's platform. It grows both of yours. And it's part of the philosophy behind why, I put together the whole Book Business and Brand Building Summit. I don't know if I'd use the term borrow, but to sort of enlarge the overall platform and reach for everybody that's involved, all of the speakers and presenters, as well as creating networking opportunities for all of you that are watching, and of course all of you that get the VIP Author Success Pass, joining our private community to network and ask questions directly to me and the Summit team. It's just an expansionary activity instead of like everybody's doing their own thing individually, and that can get tiresome because it means you have to do a heck of a lot more work. So I think the value of collaboration is probably a big takeaway of mine throughout this conversation. And it seems like it's definitely served you well in the course of your business.
Absolutely. I'm a little too open sometimes. Some people say, I even met with other larger publishers who, I just they wanted to see who I was. I wanted to see who they were. And I just wanted to talk and share with my passions. And several of them actually later confessed that they tried to copy us and duplicate our success, but failed miserably because they forget that it's not all about the income for them. It's not all about the book. It's about the relationship. It's about why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, to talk about being open, you guys have a view into the C-suite of a publisher's office here. Right behind you, David, you can see what's on your desk. There's some books there. Anything in particular you want to share that's top of the pile on the founder and CEO of Morgan James Publishing's desk?
I got a couple of them here. So here's a book that's coming out not too far from here. This will probably be in the spring of next year's catalog. This is all about becoming a leader of character. So obviously that's important to grow your business and grow your platform, but make sure people recognize you as having that authority, but being able to be credible in the process. It even has a foreword by Coach K. So that's pretty powerful. It's a great book. And I also have a gift here from one of our authors that I haven't even had a chance to unwrap yet. But this is Joanne Miller, Dan Miller's bride, wrote a book on creating a haven for peace. So she's married to an entrepreneur, and they live in an entrepreneur house. And sometimes that can be conflict, and sometimes it can be heaven. Depends on how you play together, and making sure that you have a plan in place to create an opportunity around that chaos. Just like my wife had a plan. She had a plan to reel me in and help me understand it wasn't just about me, because that's what I was focusing on, but it was about us and building balance in. And today, dude, I tell you what, I'm spoiled rotten. I've got a clear balance of faith, family, food, and friends. I work from 10 to 5. I take a 2-hour lunch. I'm home every night and every weekend when I'm not traveling and speaking. And when I do travel and speak, I take Fridays off so I can spend even more time with my bride. So it's a process, but I forget what the question was.
No, I love that. I love that because I wrote a book called Lifestyle Entrepreneur, and being a lifestyle entrepreneur is about having a life as well as a business and finding where that balance is so that you can both accentuate the things you're passionate about and explore them, but not have them overtake your life to such a degree that it cancels out or negates food, family for sure, friends, and fun. Because if it's not fun, how long are you really going to want to do something?
Yeah. Well, 13 years later, Jesse, we're still having the time of our life.
I can't imagine how many books you'll have in another 15.
We're doing about 140 a year right now. Got plans to go back up to the 200 again as we continue to perfect our process, but we're changing lives and making money and having fun.
Well, maybe you can start to help us bring this to a close and share for people that are watching this and are interested in the Morgan James publishing market model. What do you look for in an author, and any final words of wisdom for authors that are maybe at the beginning of this journey and feel a little overwhelmed by the whole process?
Well, it definitely can be very overwhelming. There's so many options today. It's amazing. There's great, safe places to self-publish. There's great hybrid places to publish. The traditional houses still do a good job, and there's still a path for you. And my passion really, ultimately, even still today, is trying to help the authors find their right path. We primarily look for an entrepreneur that's got something good to say. Now, over the last 13 years, we've focused on the author being 80% of why we do what we're doing. But we recognized not too many years ago that entrepreneurs sometimes even write fiction books, and entrepreneurs even sometimes write faith-based books, and entrepreneurs even write kids' books. So we even have brands now that do kids and faith and fiction. But the fiction is just clean for us. We like to do just a clean fiction. And the kids' books are hopefully positive stories of creating an opportunity and lifestyle for the kids. And then our faith-based books are just good faith-based, good educational books. But the common core is they're all being written with a bigger purpose. Their authors are still leveraging the books to grow their platform, to grow their business or grow their message or their nonprofit. So that's kind of what we're looking for. So for us, we understand that we're not right for everybody, but we certainly love developing relationships and helping authors find their right path.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I can say that, for somebody that runs a large and growing publishing company, you're refreshingly easy to be in contact with, which I think is just a testament to the emphasis you placed on relationship building throughout your business and I guess personal life as well.
Yeah, and I have a great staff that helps.
That helps too. So any final words of wisdom for the authors, the entrepreneurial authors out there, from the man, the king of publishing, David Hancock, while we've still got you?
Absolutely. So some of my takeaway words of wisdom would be to keep pressing forward. Know in your heart that you've got something good, or in your heart that you've got something good and that people can benefit from it. Don't get discouraged. Don't listen to the naysayers. You can finish the book. Heck, don't even listen to yourself sometimes. You can finish the book. I want you to finish it, move forward, get it done one way or the other. Definitely continue listening to the great advice from Jesse. But I want to give you a nice little warning. And this will happen to you sometime or another. At some point in your career, probably sooner than later, somebody or some groups of people are going to start to poo-poo on your parade. They're going to start to discourage you. They're going to just lovingly tell you, and it might even be family, it might even be your spouse, it might be your business coach, it might even be your business partner, but somewhere along the line, sooner than later, someone's going to come to you and say, Jesse, if I could use Jesse as an example, Jesse, you've been talking about this stuff for a long time now. I think it's time to start talking about something else. Or you keep saying it that way, and I think that they're tired of hearing it. Can we make a change? Can we do something else? Can we go in a different direction? Can we re-describe what we're doing? Can we just make some changes because we've heard it all and we're tired of hearing it? Now, they may say it with love, and they really do mean, they mean well for you. But the reality is I want you to expect it, and I want you to listen to them with a smile, and you love them still. And you pat them on the back, and you shoo them away, and you keep pressing forward doing the exact same thing, because that's just about the time that the public will start to know that you exist. If you stop and change, you're going to miss it all.
That's phenomenal advice. Thank you. And it's like, I guess I'll just give a final reflection, then we'll take this across the finish line. But in terms of whether or not to change course or double or triple down, after the 2.5, 3 years of going through life as the author, a best-selling author of Lifestyle Entrepreneur. And when I decided I wanted to move into publishing and help other authors take, the similar approach that you've heard David and myself describe on this interview, I decided to call my publishing company Lifestyle Entrepreneurs Press, which you can see up there. It's the same font, the same illustration, because it's an exponent of the same philosophy that I've been talking about and that living through for 10 years, talking about as an author for 2.5, 3 years, and helping now other people carry forward into their work as authors and entrepreneurs. So it's great. Plenty of people have told me, why don't you talk more about this, or maybe you should emphasize that, or go in this direction. So David's advice, take it to heart, love them anyways, smile when they're saying it to you, and then say thank you, but no thank you. Keep going with what feels right and true. David Hancock, everybody. You've got him. And, thank you so much. This has just been a phenomenal conversation, a great chance to catch up, learn a little bit more, and learn some new stuff about your story, and just appreciating your willingness to come on and share and take us home.
Absolutely, brother. Your success is my success. And Jesse, it's a privilege to be here. It's great to see you grow so much, and I really enjoy seeing you do that.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on a future video here on the Book, Business, and Brand Building Summit. Bye for now.